Coming up next on the Voice of Alabama Politics, indicted lawmaker Barry Moore walks free. Also, the V-Team takes a look at the upcoming elections. Mike Hubbard's crowing like the cock of the walk. Cock of the walk today, feather duster tomorrow. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics with your host, Bill Brett, and the V-Team with Claire Austin, Susan Britt, Jack Campbell, Baron Coleman, Charlana Spencer, and special reports with Jonathan Barbie. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to the Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Good Sunday morning.
A stunning victory for Barry Moore, a tragedy, in my opinion, for the justice system. Barry Moore walked free this week on 2 counts of giving false statements and 2 counts of perjury. And to me, having known the facts for almost a year of what he did and having the tapes, I am astonished at what happened. Baron, what is your take?
Well, my take is a jury found him not guilty. They believed him. He got on the stand and said, I forgot the conversation. And if you believe that he forgot the conversation, then he's not guilty. You can't lie. You can't perjure yourself. You can't give false statements if you didn't remember the statements in the first place. And so the jury obviously bought that. It was kind of a convoluted story, and you saying you know a lot about the story, well, the jury didn't. They only know what comes into the courtroom. You know, they're a blank slate, and the prosecution has to draw their case up there, and apparently they didn't do it to the jury's satisfaction.
I think one of the things that seems interesting to me, and it is just watching the jury process, you know, and seeing how they pick 12 people who don't even know who Mike Hubbard is or right. Barry Moore.
Who knows if they do know him or they don't know him? I find it hard to believe that they don't know their state representative over there, but they certainly wouldn't know Barry Moore.
Well, it was an interesting trial. Bill Baxley presented a case that was sort of the case he wanted to try. Jack, what did you think of what Baxley did?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but it seemed to me that he did a great job of confusing the jury as to what actually materialistic happened in the case, which was Barry Moore executed a threat that he was passed on to by Mike Hubbard, delivered it to his opponent, and then said, oh, I really forgot about it. And he, you know, I think what Baxley did was make the jury just totally confused about what the actual case was.
Does this mean Baxley at 72 hasn't lost a step? I mean, he
well,
won,
I would say
Claire?
he's still got it in him. And, you know, he's an excellent lawyer. He's been an attorney general. He knows exactly how to do and perform these criminal cases, and I think he does an excellent job for his clients.
Well, I have to apologize to him because, you know, the first day he was talking about things that happened in 1913 and 1920, and I thought, boy, this guy doesn't even know where he's at. I guess that was part of the act, was it? Did people have that kind of act?
Well, certainly through day one at least, a lot of us listening to Bill Baxley were confused. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, he did do a good job.
Yeah.
He had an extraordinarily difficult set of circumstances and facts to work with. And when you're backed in the corner as a defense lawyer, really your only thing to do is to try to confuse, to introduce things from so many different angles that the jury really has trouble locking in on any one thing. It was interesting, the jury deliberated about 7 hours, which means there was some discussion. My guess is they listened to those tapes multiple times, compared it to the language on the indictment, the question from the grand jury testimony, considered the fact that Barry Moore stood up there, looked very sincere during his testimony, and said he forgot that he had had the conversation. And you put all that together, and I mean, reasonable doubt's a very high burden. Even if they thought it was more likely than not.
I did find something interesting, though. The guy that couldn't recall the conversation is the same guy that I think filed a motion earlier to have the phone conversations thrown out because one of them was made while he was in Florida. So he remembered that much about having the conversation.
Well, and if you follow the thing, if his grand jury testimony, he says, Matt Hart asked him, did he know anything about this phone conversation or threat or this or that? And he says, no, sir. And then he said, however, my opponent may have mentioned something about that, said something about it, or to that effect. So he obviously remembered portions of the conversation, but the jury didn't believe that he did.
No, they didn't, and they found for Barry Moore, and he won fair and square, and congratulations to Barry Moore.
Yeah.
A terrible ordeal to go through in order to get a not guilty verdict. There really are no winners in a not guilty verdict.
You know,
the state loses, and really the family loses.
Well, and I agree with you. I don't happen to agree with the verdict, but I agree that the system that we have, it works when it works. But I feel badly, I do feel badly for the family. I also feel badly for Josh Pipkin and Jonathan Tellis, Jack, two men that you know. I mean, these men may be ruined by this.
Well, it certainly hurts them in their community, and it's sad because here are two guys. I don't think Jonathan was against Barry Moore to begin with. And when Josh Pipkin decided to run, I'm not sure Jonathan was all that enamored with the idea. But when they both talked to Barry, they got a feeling that Barry was saying, Josh, if you run, Speaker Hubbard's not going to bring those jobs to Enterprise. And these guys acted in good faith, and it just didn't work out for them. And
Well, Claire, it kind of reminds me of Scott Beeson, doesn't it?
It does, but it's really sad when you just take a step back from both of this, from both perspectives. Here's two guys running a Republican primary. You should be able to have spirited debate, and there shouldn't be these type of threats and things that go on in people's lives. You should just have a political primary and move along with it. And you shouldn't get the speaker and leadership involved. And it's a travesty to many and to all because so many people have been ruined through this process.
There's one thing that never made sense to me throughout this entire trial, and I think the prosecution really should have nailed it home during closing, and I don't know that they did very well. If Barry Moore truly believed his story that he was spinning to the jury, that, heck, Josh Pipkin was the one talking about the threats. Maybe he had heard about them. Why didn't Barry Moore on any of those phone calls say, Josh, what are you talking about? Right. What threats are you talking about?
Right.
And I think had they gone to the jury and looked him in the eye and said, do you believe this story? The guy is supposedly saying that Josh Pipkin's bringing him the threats for the first time, and he doesn't say, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
He sort of went along with it on the tape. So I think
Selective
there's a
memory?
lot out there.
Little
Well, I don't
selective memory in
know.
the trial?
I was at the trial every day, and it was amazing to watch this high-powered defense team against the state. I mean, there were some significant hired guns. But Van Davis did offer an incredible closing statement in which he said, I woke up this morning and the fog was so thick, I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. What the prosecution failed to do was to cut through the fog that the high-dollar defense attorneys put over the people in the jury. You're watching The V. We'll be right back with more commentary and more thoughts. Stay tuned.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
Some politicians talk about jobs, but Craig Ford actually did something about it. Craig helped create an industrial development authority that saved 1,400 jobs here at Goodyear and created another 190. Thanks, Craig.
We really couldn't have a better friend working for us in Montgomery. Craig has fought the attempts to raid our school budgets and has brought home millions of dollars to our classrooms. Thanks, Craig.
I'll fight for good jobs and good schools because that's what's important for families like yours and mine.
Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek, Wetumpka. The perfect escape for date night, a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek, Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.
I make sure to get your kids to school and home safe every day. I am AEA.
I make sure your child receives a healthy meal each day. I am AEA.
Thank you, AEA, for protecting our public schools and our futures. We are AEA.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. This week, indicted lawmaker Barry Moore walked free. Within minutes of that announcement, Speaker Hubbard and his minions were on the airwaves saying that he should be acquitted, or not acquitted, but all 23 indictments should be dropped against him, that this was a political prosecution, that it shows he had done nothing wrong. Claire, spin is everywhere, right?
That is correct. Well, you know, they've hired the best and the brightest, I guess, from everywhere in the state of Alabama. But come on, what came out of the courtroom and the decision and the verdict has nothing to do with Mike Hubbard.
Well, I mean, it had something to do with him,
Well, it had
but it
something to
didn't
do
have
with him,
anything to do with his 23 indictments.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
you know, that was a conversation and a political campaign and a race, and unfortunately a bunch of people were involved in that. But Mike's charges so much, and once again, I'm not a lawyer, were, you know, using your office for personal gain, gaining money and different things like that. That's a whole different ballgame.
Jack, this is serious business, though. He's going to spin this and spin this and spin this.
Yeah, but you know the Barry Moore verdict was a political novice who lied.
Right.
The jury didn't buy that he lied.
Right.
Mike Hubbard's accused of stealing money, and a lot of it, and personally enriching himself while in office. Two totally different tracks here, and I think he's got some serious problems. I don't care whether Barry Moore's convicted or not. Mike Hubbard's in trouble.
Barron, I talked to several legislators that said they were looking for a brighter day with Hubbard gone, and now they are terrified that he's going to punish them like Vlad the Impaler. What's your take on that?
Any legislator who's scared of Mike Hubbard or any other legislator has no backbone. What are you scared of? Losing your committee assignment? I mean, honestly, what are you scared of? You're in elected office to do the right thing. If you think he's the kind of guy who'll be vindictive and punishing, lock arms with other like-minded people and don't vote him in as speaker.
I don't understand why there hasn't been a public outcry for him to step aside while this case is adjudicated. The very people who called for Mark Fuller to resign at his judicial post are silent about Mike Hubbard. I mean, I don't get it.
Well, Mike Rogers wasn't. He came out and cheerleaded for him.
Yeah, well.
Well, and look, like, and I think you even wrote about this. I mean, look what happened in South Carolina and Indiana, and I think there's something going on in North Carolina. These people received indictments. They stepped aside or moved aside. That's the thing to do, because what Hubbard is doing is going to hurt the Republican Party statewide.
But it's more about power for him than it is building the party, and we all know that.
Well, I know. I understand.
But step outside your bubble, Mr. or Mrs. Legislator. Step outside your bubble. What are you scared of? He's not going to harm you physically. He's not going to destroy your family. He might remove you from your chairman or vice chairmanship if he remains speaker. But if you think he's the kind of guy who's that vindictive, don't put him in as speaker.
Or not bring 100 jobs to your town.
Well, yeah.
Well, you know, interestingly enough, next week, this coming week, they're going to have a meeting of the House caucus in which they're going to elect the new speaker.
Well, they're going to kind of anoint.
Well, they anoint. Okay, it'll be binding.
And let's say the House Republican caucus, and this has really never been done in the past. The Democrats have never done this to make sure that they're a re-elected speaker. This is outside of the box to have a caucus meeting like this 2 days after an election.
It's called circling the wagons.
Yeah, and you kind of doubt that anybody's going to go against Mike now just because they're going to spin this Barry Moore acquittal as if they won the whole war.
Oh, yeah, if I'm advising Mike Hubbard, I tell him to call another press conference and stand up there and say, see, I told you it was a political prosecution. I told you this was a rogue prosecutor. I told you the good people of Lee County could see through this stuff, and they did. And I would take Barry Moore and I would make him my own. I would take that verdict and I would make it my own.
Mini-me.
Yeah.
Barry Moore is now the mini-me.
I'm sure they've already thought of this.
Well, I'm sure they have too.
But the point that Jack has made, you've got to get back to the charges and his corruption charges and taking things for value and making money, and then taking legislative language and doing wordsmith to benefit a contractor.
You know, and I think that's
I mean,
interesting.
that's a different ball game than what Barry Moore did.
I mean, some of these people that are named in the indictment, some of the people that are named in the indictment, not that they're indicted, but they're named. I mean, they've lawyered up with some of the biggest lawyers in the state. Will Brook and Jimmy Rain have the luxury of hiring somebody like Joe Espy. Anthony Joseph, I think, is representing Billy Canary. I can't remember the name of the guy who used to work with Hart, who's representing...
Governor?
No.
Athenas?
Yeah, Athenas. He's representing...
Bob Riley?
Bob Riley. Yeah. I mean, these are some big guns. This guy, Athenas, you know, he worked right next door with Hart. I mean, they're buddies. And his website says he specializes in people that are indicted before federal grand juries. I mean, these are high-powered guns, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Well, that goes back to my point in a conversation we had earlier, is, you know, you've got these high-powered lawyers that people are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to, you know, all across the board for these people who, ones have been indicted, ones that have just been named in indictments. And then you've got what I call your standard career U.S. attorney employees and attorney general employees up against these kind of guys. Now, we all know there's a little bit different variance in their experiences as well.
Barron, as an attorney, I'd like to ask you a question. Some of these high-profile people that are named in the indictment, not accused of any wrongdoing, but named in the indictment, like Will Brook, Bob Barton of Hoare Construction, you know, these are guys with plenty of money. They've hired big lawyers, we think. You think they would just go there and they don't want to go through a trial like just a common person? I mean, they might talk, mightn't they?
Well, you know, two things. First is, no, they haven't been named in the indictment. They weren't indicted.
Right.
But you said they weren't accused of doing anything in the indictment. If Mike Hubbard is indicted for receiving something of value,
they could be indicted for giving.
Then they could be indicted for giving something of value. It's the same statute. It goes both ways.
Right.
So that's number one. Number two is, I guess you're asking, would they be willing to roll rather than
face a trial?
When you've got nothing to lose, sometimes you face the trial. When you're a billionaire or a 100 millionaire or even just a 10 millionaire, jail's not your place. That's not your cup of tea. And the likelihood that you're going to go down for your buddy is very small.
You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with a look at the upcoming elections. Stay put. We'll be right back.
The V is sponsored by MediaWorks Communications, quality video production and marketing services. The Locker Room, fine men's clothing.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek, Wetumpka. The perfect escape for date night, a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek, Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.
Some politicians talk about jobs, but Craig Ford actually did something about it. Craig helped create an industrial development authority that saved 1,400 jobs here at Goodyear and created another 190. Thanks, Craig.
We really couldn't have a better friend working for us in Montgomery. Craig has fought the attempts to raid our school budgets and has brought home millions of dollars to our classrooms. Thanks, Craig.
I'll fight for good jobs and good schools because that's what's important for families like yours and mine.
Welcome back to the Voice of Alabama Politics. This is going to be a potentially boring 2014 election. There may be some surprises out there, but, you know, Bentley's really got this thing already in the bag, doesn't he, Claire?
Well, he does. And traditionally, you know, the governor's race in the state of Alabama drives the ticket and motivates people to get out and vote. And it's just not really a contest for the governor's race. Now, I think the one statewide race that I think is a contest is the attorney general's race. I mean, from what I've been hearing for the last month, that's almost a dead heat race. Is that what you're hearing, Jack?
I feel like Luther may be pulling away a little bit, but it's been pretty tight, a lot tighter than any of the other statewide races.
You know, and Susan and I were talking about this the other day, and where Brandon was telling us a lot of these gun groups are crazy about Joe Hubbard.
They are. They love Joe Hubbard's wife on the shooting range. That says a lot to the gun owners in the state of Alabama.
As a woman who shoots
as a woman who shoots a 9mm Beretta,
I pack the heat
I'm
as
right
well.
there with her.
A lot of the closet gamblers don't like Luther because he shut down, you know, Victoryland, and
well, you know,
that
and he
gets
came after the Porch Creek Indians.
Right.
Well, you know, this fact that Joe has gotten money from the Porch Creek and folks like that hasn't hurt him a bit, has it really?
I don't think so.
The same polls that were running for to see what the race is with Joe and Luther actually showed that the PCI are gaining favorability within the state as well.
Well, I think people are getting to the point where they're kind of leaning towards the lottery. They don't care about bingo so much, you think?
But I think maybe these things, what's going on in Lee County has probably helped Luther and probably helped him pull maybe away. Or I think in the end, my gut is in the end, win will be for Luther, and I think this in Lee County has probably helped Luther.
Do you think that some of this, that some of these down ballot races, though, somebody was telling me the other day, if you were a Republican and you weren't in double digits, you possibly could be in trouble because of the Empower Alabama registering so many voters. Do you hear anything like that?
Yeah, they've registered a lot of voters, but I'm just not sure it's enough. I mean, we're still a red state, but there are some legislators who are in trouble. Roger Bedford, Democrat, who's an icon in the Senate, is in a very, very tight race.
Yeah, but the Dr. Stutz out of Florence, and
Right.
from what I can see, the people in Florence and Lauderdale and those counties think that whoever represents them should be from that area, and I think that maybe Senator Bedford may have stepped on some toes of the former state senator Irons, who was very popular up there.
Phil Williams, who's a senator in Etowah County, is running against a very popular Larry Means, who's a Democrat, who used to be in that seat. And I think that's a pretty tight one right now.
Well, Susan, you've observed that one up close and personal.
Absolutely, because we have a farm up that way. I grew up with Larry Means grew up with my brother. Yeah, it's a very tight race up there. Larry Means is extraordinarily popular throughout the rest of the county. Phil Williams more so in the Rainbow City, Southside area. But it's like neighbor against neighbor up there. You'll see this yard has a Means sign, the next yard has a Williams sign, you know, the next yard has a Means sign. And
well, if Means wasn't running as a Democrat, he would destroy this Phil Williams guy.
You know,
he's really not even from around there. You know, he's kind of from out of state. You
know? There's a very interesting legislative race up in Marshall County between Will Ainsworth, Republican, they own Dream Ranch, whatever it is, and Jeff McLaughlin, a former state rep. That's a very tight race.
Why is that?
I think they're both very well liked locally.
And McLaughlin is a very conservative Democrat. He served down here before. People really like him. He's a nice, honest guy.
And of course, Will Ainsworth, you know, I don't have a vote. I'm crazy about Will, but he's in a tough race, and I think it kind of pulled away a little bit more than anybody thought it would.
Right.
But
I guess I would say I like them both. The people of that area in Marshall County, either
it's
one
a win-win,
elected is win-win because they're both great guys.
You think the teachers are going to have any say in this, Susan? You know, the teachers been pretty riled up. You think
they have been very riled up, especially about the Common Core and different things, their salaries and whatever. I think they're paying close attention to this. And if they turn out in their numbers, they can really make a difference.
Ken Johnson versus, who's his opponent up there? Jody Letson.
Jody Letson, former House member
who he
as well.
beat 4 years ago, is now running against him. I hear that's a pretty tight race.
Well,
and the teachers are playing a role in that one. They're out for Letson.
Well, I think
Ken's not been a friend of education.
Right, and I think that the whole thing to the viewers is what happened with the accountability bill. And then I also think the races that are really tight are more of the House Republican races because what's gone on in Lee County with Mike Hubbard and most of these people in these tight races have been following the leadership, you know, for the last 4 years.
Well, you know, it just seems like in a year where there shouldn't be change, there is change. And you know, we're looking at these smaller races. They may be telling. They may
Well,
be
and
very
if you look at the primary, some of the incumbents who were one-term wonders who fell on the sword for Mike Hubbard got beat in the primary.
Yeah, they've gone back to the farm.
Wes Long didn't run again, and you had Bill Roberts getting beat up in Walker County, and you had Bond getting beat in Winston County.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
But you know, you go back to that, like you mentioned, Jack. You had so many that didn't even run after one term in the legislative process,
which is very
unusual.
Yeah.
And there were quite a number of them. Quite a number.
Now, as far as our congressional, our United States representatives, Jeff Sessions, ding, ding, big win. Is anybody even running against him?
They're not this time.
Why would they waste their money?
The only, but you've got the open seat of Spencer Backus, Congressman Spencer Backus, which Gary Palmer is a Republican nominee, and there is a gentleman. What's the gentleman's name?
I don't know. I can't remember.
I know Bill Clinton just endorsed him here in Alabama this past week.
Yeah, and he's a
that'll
great,
make a lot of difference.
Yeah, well,
he's popular. Wait a minute, he is popular in Alabama.
That's true.
Yeah,
He is.
yeah, that's true. Well, you know, it's just interesting to me that doesn't change much. You know, once you're in up there, you just kind of you're there for life until you.
Well, if you do a good job.
Yeah, yeah.
And the heartburn is on the state level, not the not the on the regional level, but with these legislative races. I think people are worried about the economy. I think Bentley, when he's elected, is going to have a tough 4 years and turning things around in Alabama because we ain't really sitting all that pretty right now.
Well, they're going to have to get creative. They're going to have to really put the money where their mouth is instead of in their pocket, and make some difference here in the state.
They got to gravel with some serious budgetary issues in the state of Alabama this next year.
And not only are they going to have to concentrate on bringing jobs in, they're going to have to concentrate on maintaining the jobs we already have.
Jack, any surprises?
Maybe Roger Vedford goes down, which will be very interesting, depending on whether the teachers turn out or the Republican base turns out. It could be a very tight race. Phil Williams could get beat in Etowah by Larry Means. Those two races are really in play.
Susan, what do you think?
Well, then there's a possibility that Ken Johnson may go down, and that would be a surprise.
Claire, what about it?
I think you might see Jeff McLaughlin come back. That could be a surprise, too.
All right, we're going to have to hold it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You can catch us every day on alreporter.com and every Sunday on your ABC affiliate throughout the state. Thank you for watching, and have a great Sunday.